Hello everyone, it's Shannon here for Waffle Flower Crafts. In today's video, we're going to create this sweet spring card featuring the January Club Kit. Plus, I'm going to share with you some easy ways to add foil accents without a glimmer machine. I'm going to start by creating the background. I have an A2 panel, so 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 of some light blue cardstock. I'm going to grab the stencils that come in the Club Kit. These are the layered bow stencils. Each one of them is labeled. There's 2 in the set. I'm going to start with stencil 2. Now my stencil 2 looks a little bit different than yours. Mine is the older version. You have the revised version. But luckily it will not change creating today's background. It's going to be made the same way. I'm going to line up the second stencil here with over my A2 panel. I used a couple pieces of tape to hold that stencil in place. And now I'm going to start ink blending. I'm starting with Salvaged Patina Distress Oxide, and I'm going to pick a couple of the bows to ink blend. I'm also using a Shader 1 brush. It's just the perfect size to get in here and just ink blend that small area of the bow. I'm not trying to actually ink blend any gradations. I'm keeping this pretty flat. I'm going to rely on the layering stencils to add depth, not actually ink blending gradations. Now I'm going to move on to another color. This is Kitsch Flamingo. Again, going to pick out some of the bows to ink blend. I'm not going to ink blend them all because we're going to create this rainbow background with lots of different colors. Starting with a piece of colored cardstock for our background, instead of white, we kind of default and always start with white when we have stencils. But starting with this colored cardstock is going to create more contrast and really help our bunny ears to pop from the background. I'm now moving on to another color. This is Shaded Lilac. Again, picking out a couple of the bows to ink blend. Then we'll move on to Squeezed Lemonade, a yellow, and just pick out a couple of those bows and quickly ink blend them. Again, I'm ink blending them nice and flat, not really trying to create any gradations. And then we'll finish up with the green. This is Cracked Pistachio, and just finish up and ink blend those last 2 little bows here. Well, after we finish with that Cracked Pistachio, we'll be ready for the next layer. I'm going to go ahead and remove this stencil, which again was stencil number 2, and then we'll grab the first stencil. I like to start with number 2 just because I like to establish the base of the bows and then kind of add the detail layers. So to me, it just works to start with the second stencil. So now I've got the first stencil in place here, and we're now going to move on to adding the detail layers. So for all the blue bows, I'm going to ink blend them in peacock feathers, and then ink blend some of the polka dots in the background with that peacock feathers as well. The peacock feathers is just a little bit darker than the Salvaged Patina, so it's going to add nice contrast. For the pink bows, I'm using Picked Raspberry, again a little bit darker than that Kitsch Flamingo, so they work nicely together. Then for the purple bows, I'm using Wilted Violet. And also, while I'm ink blending with each one of my new shades, I am ink blending a couple of those polka dots to just kind of balance out this background and get that color spread around more evenly. Then for the yellow bows, I'm moving on to Mustard Seed. And then lastly, we'll finish up with our green, and I'm going to use a Lucky Clover. But before I realized I missed a couple polka dots with that pink, so I went back to the Picked Raspberry. Now we're on to that Lucky Clover, ink blending the details for the bows as well as a couple of the remaining, or actually all the remaining polka dots. Now I remove the stencil, and then I realized I missed one bow here on the lower right, so I'm going to grab my peacock feathers and quickly ink blend that last bow, and now we have our finished background. Isn't it so sweet? I love the depth that just that simple second layer really adds to the bows. Now we're going to amp up that dimension a little bit more with just simply a gel pen. I'm adding some highlights to the bows as well as the polka dots, and just takes it up one more level. It makes them a little bit more dimensional, pop off the page a tiny bit more, but it also incorporates the white that we will be adding when we add the bunny ears to the card. So it just kind of brings it together a little bit more. After I finish adding my highlights, I'm going to move on to this really cool liquid adhesive from Decofoil. This is going to be a really easy foil accent. I'm going to squeeze it out here and just as little polka dots, kind of fill in some of the open spaces with this. Once this adhesive has completely dried, and you can tell it's dry is when it's clear, it's no longer cloudy. It takes about an hour, but once it's completely dry, we will take some foil and rub it over the top, and it will stick to those dots. So you do not need a glimmer machine. You don't need a laminator even, or a ink machine either. I'm going to finish up here with my last little polka dot, and then I'll set this aside to dry. We're now going to move on to foiling our sub-sentiments. This sub-sentiment sheet that comes with your club kit is actually printed with toner ink, which means you can actually foil over it using a laminator or a mink machine and these transfer sheets, these foil sheets from Decofoil. I'm going to be using this shade here, which is aqua, but there's tons of different options, even some with patterns on them. You need a carrier sheet, which is just a piece. I'm just using a copy paper folded in half. I put my sub-sentiments down, then my foil shiny side up, and then I folded my carrier sheet over, and now I'm just going to feed it through my laminator. Now you do need to make sure that your laminator has been heating up for at least 20 minutes before you try this. It needs to be good and hot to get a good transfer of the foil. But you can see here as I pull back my foil, I'm left with these beautiful foiled sentiments, and they're going to be perfect for this Easter card. I'm now going to cut these out using my sub-sentiments die, but if you don't have this die, you can also just cut them out with the paper trimmer. You can see here that I did foil my whole sub-sentiment sheet. You can just foil one if you choose. You don't have to foil all your sentiments like I did. Just cut it out first and then foil it. Now I'm moving on to creating my bunny ear. So I have all the dies for the bunny ears die here. I'm just going to die cut them out of some white cardstock. Here are all the pieces. Now I'm going to move on to some simple ink blending. I'm going to start here with the inside die cut for the ears and just ink blend them with picked raspberry, creating a little bit of a gradation. You can see here that I'm moving, starting at the base of the ear and then moving up, and that creates a nice gradation. Also thanks to the help of the angled brushes. For the bow, there's two layers. For the base layer, I started with squeezed lemonade, and then for the detail layer on the bow, I ink blended it in mustard seed. So a similar method to how I made the stenciled bows. Now I'm ready to put this together. I'm going to start by adhering the inner part for the ear onto the bunny ears. Once I get that in place, I'm then going to adhere this extra band part here. It's not really necessary, but I like how it makes it more stable. Then adhere the little fold over on the ear. Isn't that cute? And then adhere the two layers of the bow together. And then lastly, I'll just adhere the bow to the ears. Now we have our focal point done. I'll now hold it to the camera so you can get a quick look. I really love how sweet these little ears look when they're all put together. We're now going to add our foil to those adhesive dots. They're completely dry now. They're nice and clear. I'm going to grab the scrap that I used or left over from the sub-sentiments, and I'm just going to hold some of that foiled area over one of those adhesive dots and then just rub with my finger, and that will actually transfer the foil from the transfer sheet onto that adhesive dot. Really, really easy to do, and I'm just going to continue to work my way around here so I get all of my adhesive dots covered with that beautiful aqua foil. And this is just a very subtle addition to the background, but it will kind of incorporate and draw in that foiled sentiment that we created earlier. So here's that finished background. Now we're ready to kind of put this card together. I'm going to start with an A2 top folding white card base and just add some tape to the front of it. Then I'll grab my background and stick it down. Once I get that stuck down, I'm going to grab my ears and my sentiment. I did already add some foam adhesive to the backside, so I'm just going to remove the backing on the foam adhesive. But before I stick that down, I'm going to grab my sentiment and just kind of figure out where that's going to go so I know where to put my ears. So I'll stick those down, and then I'll move on to that sentiment, which I also have foam adhesive on the backside. Just remove the backing and stick that right underneath the ears, and that will actually complete my card. I'll hold it to the camera here so you can get a good look at this super fun Easter card. I love all the color and the fun shine that the foil adds. It's also a nice addition of texture as well. I hope you guys enjoyed this card and video. If any questions about the products I use, please check out the links below in the description. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day.